Hey everyone, Kyle Mike here from MLive.com, joined by Justin Rogers. It's game week, Justin.
If I had one of those little confetti poppers, I would, but yeah.
We're pretty excited to move on to real football with real football players. Lions trimmed the roster to 53 over the weekend. Justin, what cut, if any, stood out to you?
I think we both would have said Jermell Cujo coming in, but obviously the Lions had a plan there. The one that surprised me most was Jeremy Ross, and I guess at some point I have to believe Jim Caldwell runs a meritocracy. He keeps saying it.
Yeah.
I think T.J. Jones outplayed Jeremy Ross during the preseason. Mm-hmm. The level of competition where those plays came was where I guess my doubt was with Jones making the roster. But they surprised me, made it happen, and I guess that was probably my biggest surprise.
Yeah, in terms of meritocracy, I've seen mixed result in that front in the past. The one that stands out to me was Nate Freeze versus Giorgio for kicker last year.
Yeah.
Tavecchio really outkicked Freeze and still got cut. So, sometimes it's just draft status or whatever. But this year, yeah, I totally agree. It was a meritocracy on so many fronts. That was a good one. And there's a few others too. I thought that played out that way as well. Exactly, Philip Hunt outplaying Larry Webster. You know that they would love to have more time with Webster, a fourth-round pick, and they got that in the practice squad, as it turns out. But that wasn't guaranteed.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a classic example of in a perfect world you hang on to Webster, but
right.
the roster's getting deep. Philip Hunt was outproducing him, and so you hang on to Philip Hunt. For me though, I thought the biggest surprise was Kellen Moore.
Yeah.
And it's just a numbers thing because under Mayhew came into power in 2008. 2009 was his first full year here. Since that time, they've always had at least 3 quarterbacks on the roster. It's just the way he rolls. It's where he feels most comfortable. And Kellen doesn't play, but he does offer some things in terms of scouting and advanced work and in the film room and in the room with Stafford. I thought they would keep him just because that's where they feel most comfortable. But I think they saw some regression from him, and also they did have injuries at other positions that they had to keep. That was something Mayhew noted this week when we talked to him. They offensive line, defensive line, they held extra guys there, and that kind of squeezed Kellen out.
Yeah, I kind of saw. I thought I saw this coming last year. I looked at Caldwell's history, and he's been kind of a 2 quarterback guy, but the GM does have a say. Mayhew seemed more comfortable with 3 quarterbacks, and that's why I think Moore stuck last year. I started asking the questions again this year. Nothing against Kellen Moore, but he had been outplayed by Dan Orlovsky with Matthew Stafford playing 64 straight games, 4 straight years now. It just seemed like a wasted roster spot to have a third QB. No matter what he offered in the room, in terms of on the field, it seemed like a wasted roster spot. So started asking Caldwell and Lombardi and Stafford about it. And, we both had him on our 53-man roster. We both thought Mayhew would stick to his guns, but as you mentioned, the injury situation at the offensive line with Larry Warford, the defensive line with Karan Reed, and the special teams offerings of Copeland just forced their hand.
One cut we were not surprised by, either one of us, was Joseph Fourier. The writing was kind of on the wall once the Lions... they traded for a guy who plays the exact same position in Timothy Wright, and did so knowing they would only get a brief look at him in practice, and a brief look, if at all, in the game. So the evaluations were in. They acquired him. Writing was on the wall for Fourier, and sure enough, he was cut on Saturday. He was among the first wave of cuts then. We talked to Mayhew this week again about the cuts and the calculus that went into some of these moves, and he had cited the ankle and some of the injury concerns that were there. And the best, I forget exactly how he said it, but
best ability is availability.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that was something that was going to be a question mark for Fourier ever since he sprained the ankle last year. It took a long time to come back. There was a couple of re-injuries. Missed the start of camp this year, re-injured it again. I think that was just, there was an issue going forward that they couldn't really trust the guy to be available for them.
And you asked Mayhew, I think, a pretty poignant question about whether off-field issues were an issue with Fourier, more of a chemistry locker room thing.
Yep.
It's something we've both seen. We've talked about a little bit here, and maybe in some of our more informal chats and stuff. Guy wasn't a locker room fit in a Caldwell world. Just a little bit more of a look at me guy than a lot of these team leaders who are quiet, go about their business. Guys like Glover Quinn and Kelvin Johnson, even Matthew Stafford, just not really loud personalities. And Fourier was that loud personality. You deal with that when a guy's a superstar. You deal with that with Darius Slay or that's the best example I have. But
Golden Tate, maybe.
Yeah, a guy that
loud guy
can be loud, but those guys are superstars or star players on a roster. Yep. Fourier was on the bubble, and his injury situation, got the best of him.
In terms of guys who actually made the team, I think T.J. Jones was among those final guys in, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how he's used going forward. Typically, a fifth receiver on this team would be inactive with all that you have from Ebron and the tight ends, but it's possible he factors into the rotation at returner. That's something that Caldwell's deflecting right now. They haven't announced a starting kicker, punt returner. They might not until the game on Sunday. But T.J. Jones is certainly in that mix after what we saw from him as a return man in the preseason. And it'll be curious to see if the Lions activate him for that role, or if they roll with Golden Tate and or Amir Abdullah at returner.
Yeah, Broyles, I think, was the example from last year. Was pretty much inactive almost every contest.
He was active 5 games, and those were the games Calvin was hurt.
I look at T.J. Jones with what he did in the preseason as kind of a front runner, in my opinion, or should be a front runner for that return job. There's nothing to indicate that he is. There's nothing to indicate anything right now. We haven't seen anything, but he was clearly the best punt returner all preseason. Again, third and fourth special teams units, but moved well, showed good vision, elusiveness. They need somebody that can provide a spark back there.
There's no question he was the best return man in the preseason, but as you said, he was doing that against third and fourth teams, so you have to take that into account. Plus, you have to remember they brought in Amir Abdullah in the second round in part because they thought he would contribute on special teams in addition to what he did on offense. And he was less impressive during the preseason, but that was a specific thing they liked about him from what he did at Nebraska. He was a top 10 kick returner nationally as a freshman at Nebraska. Yeah. Was very good as a punt returner as a sophomore, 13.1 yards, 0.2 yards, somewhere in there, which was top 15 in the country. So the guy has some ability. It's in there somewhere. It wasn't that impressive during the preseason, but I assume he has to be in that conversation at least, if not the actual starter week 1.
Yeah, the sample size was very small in the preseason. Even training camp, we just didn't see a lot, but that's a incredibly difficult spot to evaluate since they're not going full bore. And yeah, I don't know what T.J. Jones offers otherwise. It might, I don't want to say a wasted roster spot, but you only get so many inactive on game day, and you want that those last spots to be able to contribute on special teams. And if he's not returning kicks, then wasted.
Yeah, that's what we got for today. 53-man roster is set, which of course means real football is just around the corner. We'll be here throughout the week as the Lions prepare to take on the Chargers. For Justin Rogers, I'm Kyle Meinke. We are MLive. Keep it right here.